So, Aaron Kreuter,
Hello.
welcome back to Vancouver.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to see you in person.
Same.
We mostly just know each other on Zoom. So let's start from the very beginning. How did you come to the idea of writing about the experience of Jewish summer camp?
Thanks, Jen. And thanks, everyone, for being here, and thanks for the library for hosting, and Upstart and Crow for selling the books. The idea to write a novel set at Jewish summer camp actually came to me, decades ago when I was at a Jewish summer camp.
Yeah.
I was 16, and I remember so clearly, I didn't even know if I was, I sort of was burgeoning. My sense of becoming a writer was very much tied into this idea of, I'm going to try and write a novel set at camp. I'll talk about this more in a minute, but I was very much drawn and obsessed with summer camp, this place where you go 4 to 8 weeks of the summer that's so entirely different than your home life with your parents in high school and stuff like that. I actually tried that summer to start a novel. I had 3 or 4 false starts. They were pretty bad pages.
It's fine. We all have those. Yeah.
And then after that, I wasn't really ready to attempt the novel till I was in my mid-30s, and now here we are. Obviously, the novel that it became like Burntshore is quite different than what I envisioned it being when I was 16, which I think is probably for the best.
I mean, I kind of want to read the 16-year-old novel.
Maybe there would have been even more sex and drugs. Yeah.
It would have been all sex and drugs, honestly. Let's be honest.
And a lot of that came about through the writing of the novel, the politics and this deep investigation into settler colonialism and relationships to land, et cetera. It really came about through the writing of the novel. But Jewish summer camp is, to me, an unbelievably unique phenomenon on Turtle Island. Hundreds of thousands of Jewish youth spend their summers at camp, and it becomes a major part of their identity and sense of self. And again, Ruby says this in the novel, that just the fact that these kids are able to go to this place in the woods that have a totally different social structure and social expectations, and it's much more communal, and you're much more in touch with the land. To me, that shows that we create the world we live in, and we can create better worlds. In general, in my writing, I definitely gravitate towards sort of bounded circumstances, right? A group of friends on following a band around the country, or in my short story collection Rubble Children, the geography of a fictional reform synagogue. Lots and lots of my friends and family members went to various types of camp. Jewish summer camp also really represents the wide spectrum of Jewish experience, right? From on a religious scale, very religious to totally secular, on a political scale, on a Zionist scale to maybe secular or less Zionist, to rich camps. In Ontario, there's these camps called the W camps. There's 3 camps that start with W.
What are those?
Wahonowin, Walden, and Winnebago, and they're known as rich people camps.
Oh, fancy camps.
Yeah, fancy camps.
Okay.
Yeah, all who happen to have W's. And then there's camps that are more sort of community focused or attached to a community center and things of that nature. So it really seemed like a place to explore the issues I'm obsessed with in the Jewish world. Yeah.
I find this, I've told Aaron this before, but I find this all very fascinating because I went to a high school where a lot of my friends went to Jewish summer camp, and every September they'd come back and they'd all had these other lives, and I was so jealous because the only camp I ever went to was a sad Chinese Canadian church camp, which was not fun at all. Some boys chased me around with a dead rat. Okay, that's what happened.
That sounds very camp, to be honest.
It was not a fun. I didn't
camp
enjoy
isn't for everyone, but that's the second most important reason I wrote the novel, Jen, so you could know what it's like to have been at a Jewish summer camp.
I've never been in a kayak, so Aaron keeps threatening to take me on a canoe trip where we'd have to portage, and I'm like, do you know me at all?
Oh, it's happening.
Come on, jigsaw puzzles, nice tea, and a dog on my lap. That's all I want. Okay.
Those things can all come with us.
No, they can't. I'm not carrying any of those things. That's silly. Okay. Anyway, Aaron, do you want to do a little short reading so that people can hear what Lake Burntshore is all about?
Sure. Thanks, Jen. Just a tiny bit of context for this reading. So for those of us who haven't read the novel, it takes place over one summer, the summer of 2013, and the camp in the novel, Camp Burntshore, is sort of a very, secular, apolitical camp. At least that's how it seems at the beginning. But then, at the very first days of camp, a larger than normal amount of staff get kicked out for smoking pot, and there's a major staff shortfall. So the camp owner's son, whose name is Brett, and he's a big-time Zionist, he basically convinces his dad to bring in 5 Israeli soldiers to make up for the staffing shortfall. And Israeli soldiers at Jewish summer camps, especially Zionist ones, is a major, and to my mind, terrifying phenomenon. And so that's really the first crisis. The protagonist, Ruby, she's 21 years old, she's an anti-Zionist activist, and she was looking forward to getting away from the political battles at her university at camp, and so that sort of explodes in her face. So the scene I'm going to read is right after those staff members get kicked out. And so I'm going to read a scene and then sort of alternating with that scene in the chapter, sort of the administration of the camp are making the decision to bring in the Israeli soldiers. And this scene is about bagels. It was the period before lunch on the 4th day. A bunch of counselors were sitting at the bench beside the volleyball court, their campers at swim lessons on the docks. The sun was high and hot. The kids splashed and yelled from the lake. It was a perfect summer day. The machine of camp was well oiled, moving smoothly. As most of the talk when campers were not in earshot the past 2 days, they were discussing the booted counselors who, contra to Tom's announcement, were not caught leaving camp without permission, but smoking pot in the swim shed, and, as rumor had it, caught by Tom himself. What a scene that must have been, Ruby thought, sitting on the end of the beach bench, wearing her heavily tinted movie star sunglasses, painting her toenails a pre-dawn blue. This character, Kraftchuk, is one of the ones who got kicked out. Kraftchuk is such a nut, Danielle said. Andre Agassi's open, sitting on her lap. Was such a nut, Ruby almost corrected. Remember that time for his birthday when he went to all 10 Whata Bagels in the city, got his free birthday dozen, shaved his beard, then went back to all of them and got another dozen? The birthday bagel bonanza, who could forget it? Entrance was a tub of cream cheese or a tomato or a cucumber, and then it was all you can eat and all you can bagel. Fuck, what do you mean who could forget? I was constipated for a month. Sounds like a shitty party, Casey Mustard exclaimed. Toronto bagels suck. Like, what even are they? Subpar New York knockoffs, that's what. Ruby looked up. Did he purposefully overpronounce the second T in Toronto? Or was that honestly how people from Montreal said it? Most heads nodded in agreement. It's Montreal or New York in the final bracket, Casey continued, flashing his heart-melting grin. And the winner is undoubtedly Montreal. Nope, nuh-uh, you'll never change my mind, Barry Bloom said emphatically, shaking his big, scruffy head. New York bagels are the best bagels. Are you out of your freaking mind, Danielle exclaimed, slamming the Agassi memoir shut. It's Montreal all the way. How can you beat the chewy, nutty, golden dough joy that is a fresh Montreal bagel? I'll tell you how, by eating a heavy, mountainous onion NYC bagel loaded with a full pound of whitefish salad. Ruby, who had moved on to painting her fingernails the same dark blue, hadn't got involved in the discussion yet, though she was attempted to accuse Danielle of being a traitor for favoring Montreal over Toronto. Toronto has its own bagel, and it's pretty good, Ruby declared, blowing on her fingers. If nobody else was going to, she'd have to stand up, as always, for the unfairly maligned, for the dispossessed, the forgotten. Okay, and I'll stop there. Thank you. Bagel, so, it's no accident that they're having this big argument of bagels, which continues on while the admin are deciding to bring in these Israeli soldiers, right? It's this tension between the bagel, which is like this Jewish diasporic food par excellence, right? Which adapted to every locale it was in, and then bringing in these soldiers from this violent ethnic nation state. That's why I'm wearing this bagel necklace, which I made for my launch in Toronto. I made a whole bunch of them and gave them out. So I don't know too much about bagel drama in Vancouver, but if anyone wants, you can come up to me and talk to me.
No, there's no good bagels. I mean, I don't think I'm an expert, but like, there are no good bagels. But like, which bagels are better, Montreal or Toronto?
Montreal. Yeah.
Oh yeah, hands down.
Like one of the characters says later, Tova, I'm definitely a bagel pluralist. All bagels have their time and place.
Yeah,
but
can't you be polyamorous about bagels?
Oh, 100%, yeah. But Montreal bagels are, to me, a very special, unique food, yeah.
Yeah. I went to school in Montreal, so that's like where it has to be. But I mean, yeah. Are those Fimo, by the way? Did you make it out of Fimo?
Yes.
That's so camp.
Yes.
To make things out of Fimo. See, I never went to camp, and yet I know about Fimo because I edited this book. So as we saw in that reading that you did, there's a large cast of characters in Lake Burntshore, right? They're all teens and young adults, mostly, and sort of just figuring out who they are in the world. Now, I think you write that particular period of like teen and young adulthood really beautifully without being creepy, which is a rare talent. But I want to know how it was, like the process of writing it. Did it feel challenging to you, or was it something? There are some writers that like writing that period of life is really natural to them.
Yeah, I think for me it falls definitely somewhere in between, or it's a balance between the two. It was as challenging as any writing is. Writing fiction is, for me at least, is extremely difficult. Yeah. And then, in a way, it also comes naturally. I tend to write about. I've written a lot about teenagers this far in my life. I think I still have access to that 16-year-old inside me. Yeah. But Ruby and her friends and lovers and enemies, they're mostly in their early 20s. But yeah, I think especially with teenagers and their friend group, there's just so much energy, and they have their own jargon, and it's like they're coming into the world for the first time. I'm just really, and they're figuring out their place in the world, which is very much what this novel is about. I'm really, really drawn to it. Yeah, I know. As the bad Goodread reviews tell me, there's a lot of characters in this novel.
We did delete some. We cut some characters.
But Jen and I removed some characters. Some characters were amalgamated into one.
I think I said I can't tell these two apart. Can they be the same person?
So that definitely happened. But one thing I love about fiction is its ability to imagine worlds and make worlds come alive. And it was a real. Overall, it was a real joy peopling this camp with people of all ages and positions in the camp. I
actually think, and I don't know that people talk about this enough, but I think a part of your world building here are the characters. Like, it's not just your setting, it's not just the rules of this little microcosm that you have. The cast of characters is your world, because without them, like, this leads into my question that I have for you is the heart of this book is really what is Jewish identity, right? And all of these characters, they're necessary to sort of show the wide spectrum of how people can navigate Jewish identity, particularly when it comes to history and politics. Were you trying to really write that big spectrum? And did that feel like a big responsibility? I think you did it beautifully. Well, of course, I would say that. But yeah,
Thanks, Jen. Yeah. Thanks for that vote of confidence. Yeah, it really means a lot. In pretty much most of my work, both creative and academic, a bit less so in my poetry, but it's still there. I'm just entirely preoccupied with the contemporary Canadian Jewish experience, right? Which I truly believe that the more nitty-gritty you get with a particular group, the more universalist it becomes in some ways, right? Like the struggles and tensions in the Jewish community, like stellar colonialism, capitalism, gender inequality, etc. Those all play out worldwide for sure. But yeah, when I was writing the novel, I didn't know that the Israeli soldiers were going to show up per se, and once they did, the novel sort of took off in that direction. And one of the sort of things I wanted to do in this novel was sort of make very clear the connections between settler colonialism here in Turtle Island and there in Palestine. And what better place to do it than this summer camp, which is literally in Ontario cottage country. And cottage country is very much the live frontier in Canada and in America. right? Lots of First Nations and Indigenous people reside there. That's where the battle for resources is most heated. So this relationship to land definitely came through the novel. And, as a committed anti-Zionist activist who really thinks, the Zionist narrative like hijacked and ruined the Jewish world, and it's, ruining the entire world at the moment, it was definitely important for me to explore that in the book and to sort of present alternatives. There's a very strong sense that, though not perfect, this idea of a Jewish summer camp in the wood, in this Anishinaabe land of the novel, because the land very much is Anishinaabe. There's an Anishinaabe reserve next to the camp on Lake Burntshore, and there's major Anishinaabe characters in the novel, and that becomes an important aspect later in the book when we find out that Brett is also in the process of buying 10,000 acres of crown land around the lake. So this idea of land and like settling and colonialism, etc. What better place to put it than this, bounded 8-week experience in the woods? And part of that process is also to show these like almost impossible to navigate chasms in the Jewish world, particularly when it comes to Zionism and anti-Zionism, which have existed for decades. The novel's set in 2013 and has only been like violently exacerbated since October 7th and the genocide that began on that time, which is really just a more acute stage of the genocide of the Palestinian people that's been happening since '48.
I should say that the plot line that we have here with the Anishinaabe land is such a beautiful sort of counterpoint to the politics that the characters are navigating and the way that they're navigating their own Jewish identities, because it gives them something to observe and look at and, compare and contrast with what they've grown up and, what they've grown up learning. This is a little off script, but like when you were writing that, because I know you had like a couple of Indigenous authors go through that with you, how carefully and how meticulously you must have written that whole plot line, yeah.
For sure, yeah, and this is sort of, writing Anishinaabe characters and narratives is sort of, it's related, but maybe it's not as like contentious, but it's related to like writing teenagers or writing,
yeah, because it's not you.
Who aren't you, exactly. Yeah. I'm deeply, deeply committed to representing people other than me, properly, three-dimensionally, humanly in my work. I'm a very strong believer in sensitivity readers, which is like when you hire someone to read a draft of the book to see how you're handling certain issues. The whole book was sensitivity read by the Anishinaabe and Jewish author Nathan Adler, and he actually gave me a lot of the book, gave me a lot of feedback, which came in the book. And I also had a few conversations with Wabgishig Rice, the excellent Anishinaabe novelist, he's been very supportive of the book. In a novel about settler colonialism and Zionism and the land, it was integral to me to have Anishinaabe characters. And that's one reason the novel is set in 2013, which was the summer of I Don't Know More. It was the major summer of the I'll Know More uprising, which actually I Don't Know More enters the novel when Brett's plan to buy the land becomes known to Cindy, who's the Anishinaabe from the reserve, and she's the beloved head chef at the camp. She starts organizing protests about buying this land. Yeah.
Yeah, this it's so funny to me how this novel is very much like very funny. I often think of it as like a Jewish Dazed and Confused or Freaks and Geeks, and it's very, very funny. And yet there is so much there that is like deeply political, deeply intimate. And you do a really great job of balancing both those things, because we can't talk about the heavy things without having a little bit of comedy, right? What did you ever make yourself laugh when you were writing it? Is there one comedic moment that you're like, yeah, I did that?
Yeah, I think humor is a really, really important aspect of writing, and it works in so many ways, right? It creates literary energy. You can use it to satirize, to parody, to lighten the mood, to like bring in ideas and concepts that might be difficult. Those, and it can do that all at once too. Did I laugh out loud while I was writing this novel? Oh yeah.
I laughed out loud while editing it, and I read those jokes like 7 times.
the idea that I can write a book that makes myself, that can make myself and others laugh is like an absolute dream to me. Because when I'm reading a book, the fact that you can be reading a novel and it makes you laugh out loud, that these marks on a page which like make sounds can transform into laughter. To me, that's an amazing thing that fiction can do. And when I laugh aloud at a book, it's like that's it for me. Yeah. So moments that I thought was funny.
Was there like a particular moment that you?
Well, the teenager characters, they're like insulting and their banter and the songs, and I describe the sun setting and the lake 1,000 times, but there's also plenty of description of farts and other bodily functions.
Many bodily functions.
I also love the moment when Yehuda, one of the Israeli characters, he has like the weakest English out of everyone when he mistakenly calls butterscotch ice cream butternut squash ice cream.
That was
like
funny.
That malapropism type thing, yeah.
He did that when they went to the water park.
Yeah, the water park.
I know this book.
Cultural difference can also be a great source of humor, and that happens with the Israelis. Yeah, especially Yehuda, I think.
Yeah. So Aaron reels you in with a teen romp and then tricks you into reading about settler colonialism, which is the way I like to learn things. Do you want to do like a second little reading now? That we're sort of like halfway through?
Why not? Yeah. Thanks, Jen. So I'm going to read a section that happens later in the novel. The novel is set in two parts, which sort of mirror the two parts of a Jewish summer camp. I think pretty much all Jewish summer camps, and there's hundreds, are mostly in two sessions. And the first session, like all things, this is something that I found sort of in general. The first session is much more like real rules-based, and they're strict, and you have to be there, and you have to do that, and it's taken more seriously, and there's more people. Second session is usually looser, there's less kids, the rules don't care, it's not as important. I sort of tried to bring that into the novel. One thing I found out researching this novel is that summer camp having two sessions, that's like a Jewish thing, like Christian camps or Unitarian camps or other types of camps, or like even tripping camps, they have like 1 week sessions. So it's like 6 or 7 1 weeks. And so
I only went for a week.
Yeah.
The rat time.
Yeah. And so I didn't realize that was like part of the Jewish camping experience. I could talk about this forever, but Jewish camping really became central to the Jewish North American experience because it was recognized that it can be an important part of Jewish identity building, which ended up, in many ways, becoming, totally captured by Zionism. But anyways, all that to say, this part that I'm going to read takes place at the end of the first part, so sort of the climax of the first part. And so Ruby, who was expecting to hate the soldiers, ends up, having a sexual fling with one of the soldiers, Itai, who actually is also sort of on the left, and he's against the occupation. He enlisted in the IDF, but he refused to serve, and so he spent time in Israeli military jail, which happens. The reason he got sent to camp as a soldier was, as he sort of tells Ruby in their first meet cute flirtation, was a clerical error. So she has this on again off. She's like falling for Itai, and she doesn't really want to, but she is. And
well, he's really handsome.
Yeah, and he drives the motorboat, which is like, top shelf. Yeah. He's on ski, which is like the secret service of like the summer camp. So anyways, now they're at her friend Marula's cottage on a day off, and there's a lot of drinking. And Ruby's ex-boyfriend, who she broke up with at the beginning of the summer because she caught him getting head by a co-counselor at pre-camp, and he's one of the counselors who got kicked out. He's there too. So sorry, that's all the context for this scene. Okay, that was the wrong tab. Oh my gosh, sorry.
When you color code them, it's hard to remember what the colors mean.
Yeah, the colors mean nothing. Okay, here's some of the sex, drugs, rock and roll too. Ruby was very high and quite drunk. I am very high and quite drunk. The near unbreakable sexual tension of earlier in the day, the glorious hours-long breaking of it, the explosive fight, all of it were objects of the deep past, valleyed out by the orogeny of Ruby's inebriation. As Ruby looked around the fire, at her friends, the trees, the water, the phrase cottage industry began repeating in her head, the words turgid with meaning, fecund, cottage industry, cottage industry, cottage industry. Ruby looked at Itai and smiled. Itai returned the smile. They had a big fight just before this because Itai said summer camp is just like an army base or a kibbutz, etc. Phil sat down next to Ruby. That's the ex-boyfriend. After the singing, the group had split up. Some had gone down to the water, others into the cottage. Ruby, who had been staring into the depths of the fire, cottage industry, cottage industry, cottage industry, was surprised to find herself and Phil the only ones still there. When had Tova left? I said I'd wait for you, Phil said with disdain, disbelief, a dash of hurt, an afterthought of hurt. Ruby took a breath. Her head was spinning. There was no point beating around the bush. Yeah, so? There was nothing to wait for. We were broken up. We are broken up. Phil scoffed. I loved you, Ruby. I love you. I've thought of nothing else all summer. I've been waiting, and trust me, I had plenty of opportunities to not wait. But that's not the point. That's not the point. I love you. I'm sorry. I fucked up. You know that. What happened with Talia at pre-camp was... Listen, Phil. First of all, it's only been like 3 weeks. Do you want a medal or something? Second, I don't care about Talia anymore. We're over. We're through. Go on with it. Go get those opportunities. Phil's long face, illuminated in the firelight, turned sour, turned knowing. Oh, is that what this is about? He sneered. Your Israeli fuckboy? When Margolis told me about him, I couldn't believe it. You, of all people, rebounding with a soldier of the Jewish state. Oh my God. So much for the moral high ground. Does dicking an active member of the IDF not violate BDS? Did you tell Seema yet? Seema's her Palestinian best friend. Ruby wanted to smack him. Instead, she turned away. Fuck off, she said, adding a beat later, he's a conscientious objector. Phil snorted, liquid and nasal. I thought you believed so strongly in your politics, in your belief in the power of non-oppressive diaspora, and I'm gone for what, 3 days, and you turn into a frickin' Zionist of all things? A small part of Ruby's brain was touched that Phil had, in fact, actually been listening to her all those years. The rest of her brain was plotting murder. It's nothing, Phil, she said, pretty much yelling. It's nothing. You know what? You're right. It is just a little rebound fling. We're not even really together. Are you happy now? Phil guffawed, triumphant. Ruby looked up. Itai was standing on the other side of the fire, his face fallen. Do you copy that, soldier? Phil said. He grabbed his bong and stomped off towards the woods. When Ruby turned back from watching him go, Itai had also vanished. Phil! Itai! Ruby heard the bunkie door swing shut.
Phil's the worst.
Yeah, he's an asshole.
That's why we like him. That was really great. If you haven't read like Burntshore, one of the most delightfully bonkers thing about it is that Aaron made a fake Broadway musical called Tel Aviv. And it's like Hamilton.
Tel Aviv exclamation.
Tel Aviv. Yeah, I don't know. You just scream it. So it's kind of like Hamilton, but Israel instead of the United States. And in the book, the counselors put on a production of it. And it's delightfully bonkers. And there is a granular level of detail about this fake musical that Aaron made up. Tell us how you even came up with that, because that, to me, only Aaron Kreuter would even try. Like I would like laugh about it while I was having a glass of wine and then forget if I ever said it. Yeah.
A number of first readers just thought it was a real play. They just assumed it was a real play.
Didn't I ask you? Is it real?
I didn't want to out you. I think pretty much every novel would be better if there was at least one fake Broadway musical in it.
Hard agree. Yes.
Yeah. So Tel Aviv exclamation mark is it's a Broadway musical that's in the novel and it's incredibly popular. It's actually like a musical adaptation of a novel that Theodor Herzl wrote. So this is true. The Theodor Herzl, the supposed father of political Zionism, at the end of his life, he had basically failed. What he wanted the Zionist project to be like German speaking, like not necessarily in Palestine, he failed. And the last thing he did was he wrote this utopic novel called, it was Altneuland in German, which means Old New Land, which actually means Tel Aviv. The city of Tel Aviv in Israel is actually named after this novel this imaginary novel. And it's a novel that imagines like a utopic future collective in Israel. I'm just sort of obsessed with this novel as a novel. I wrote about it in my like academic work, in my academic book. And so, yeah, I think it's related to Hamilton, and like, you know, as a lot of us did, I fucking loved the music in Hamilton, but the politics are really, really messed up. And then the idea just, you know, came into my head as it happens. I'm gonna turn Land into a musical, and I took it really seriously, and I worked really hard on it. Yeah, I have there's way more on the play than there is in the book. And so, you know, having the musical be in the novel does a few things that are like, you know, thematically relevant, right? Like, you know, part of the novel is how do we believe the things we believe? Why has Zionism become so ingrained and central in the Jewish collective? And, you know, narrative and stories is one really major reason for that. And so having this play, which actually imagines an Israel that doesn't exist, but is obviously influenced by Zionism and the real Israel, was one way to do this, right? And it's like Ruby, you know, Ruby hates the play because of her politics, but she, you know, even she admits that the music is catchy. And also, you know, theater is really exciting. You know, in my creative writing classes, I talk a lot about like, you know, how to create literary energy on the page, and I think I've mentioned it already today, but, you know, having them put on a play and like, you know, they all get fancy costumes, and, you know, it creates a lot of excitement. And sort of when the staff do put on the play at the end, that's sort of one of the climaxes of the novel, because it also alternates with another pivotal scene. And, you know, one of the characters who's really racist and Zionist, he ends up playing the one Palestinian character in the play, and just from him dressing up as a Palestinian in a very racist costume, of course, and like he leaves it on, and how people affect him, it actually makes him think about the world and his feelings. So, like the play acting, you know, it leaked out of the play into the world of the novel. Yeah.
Yeah. See, delightfully bonkers.
A big part of the novel, you know, Herzl wanted to like really show how this system can work. He's like, he took what he saw as the best of socialism, the best of capitalism, and there's like, you know, 20 or 30 pages where he describes the perfect newspaper syndicate. So of course I had to turn that into a song, right? So there's a song, and they actually discuss, you know, they fight and discuss about some of the lyrics in the novel, etc. Yeah. Ruby wrote a paper on the novel. Yeah.
Yeah, of course she did. Okay, like I was in London with my son earlier this year, and we went and saw Hamilton, right? One of the last couple of weeks that it was playing in London. And the whole time I was watching, I just kept thinking of Tel Aviv, which is so hilarious. That's how much like Burntshore is in my head. You know, like they're singing, you know, what's that famous Hamilton song? I'm not gonna get my shot or whatever. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, and shot, I'm like, how would they do this in Tel Aviv? Anyway.
Someone asked me once if I would let them like actually make that into a play.
Like someone actually wants to make it into a play?
No. Someone asked me if someone did. And
yeah, would you?
No, I don't think so. No.
Oh, really?
Well, you know, the novel is very critical of the play. Like, I don't think. Anyways, yeah. I mean,
well, what if it was like a satire?
Depends how many zeros are on the check. Jen.
I mean, at the end of the day. Like whenever anybody says I wouldn't let someone make like a film or a stage play out of my book, I'm like, you don't know that yet. You can't answer that.
I definitely have said that about my novel, but I have like a friend, like an anti-Zionist Jewish comrade of mine, she's very into filmmaking and theater making in Toronto, and she was like, I want to make this into a movie. I want to get like all our anti-Zionist actor friends together, and like we'll go up to like a camp in September and make this movie. And that was the first time where I was like, oh yeah, maybe I would do it.
It could be a movie. It would be a great movie. It would be really cute.
Yeah.
And also like really heavy.
Cute and heavy.
Yeah. Like Stand By Me.
Yeah.
Like that. That's how I'm imagining it. Okay, so Lake Burntshore came out April. Was it April?
April 22nd.
April 22nd. How do you think the reception has been? Because I've seen some of the reception. I'm not going to tell the people what it's been like. You can tell the people.
Yeah, having a book go out into the world is a very trying and difficult experience. And this is especially for a novel, I found. I think this was the most hard letting go of the novel into the world. Yeah, I mean, it's going pretty well. Yeah, the novel's getting attention. I've, you know, done a bunch of podcasts. The two sort of things that happened recently, which I'm really excited about, is I got like a 5-page spread with like 8 photos in a Unique Muskoka magazine, which is like a free magazine they give out.
It's a very glossy, bougie, like Town and Country.
It's a lot of ads. It's mostly
Yeah.
ads for like fancy cottage furniture and stuff.
Yeah.
I pitched it to them, and she was like, "Okay, we're gonna do a profile. Send me like 8 to 10 photos." And I didn't know she was gonna use them all, but so that, and then as some of you may have saw, I had a pretty positive review in Times of Israel, which is a very Zionist right-wing newspaper in Israel. The review itself was very positive, but the editors were obviously not that happy with the positive review. So the headline said like, "Sex, drugs, and anti-Zionism fuel this new woke novel."
Woke, yeah.
Using woke as a pejorative, obviously,
Yeah.
and then called me far left in like the subheading, which I wear those descriptors with pride, but that's not how they were intended.
But the review was actually very positive.
Yeah, for sure. He actually really connected with the novel. So Times of Israel, woke, far left. Some glossy photos of me with my tattoos out in Unique Muskoka. What more could you want?
It's like the whole spectrum of media.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't I saw the Muskoka one was really funny because it reminds me, like, if you go to a resort city in Mexico and they have them at the hotel or at the spa or whatever, those like glossy what to do in Cabo, that's what they are. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. To be fair to Unique Muskoka, they do some good work. Like there's some real articles in there too.
Okay, so, yeah, of course.
I
read it for the articles, Aaron.
I always read it for the articles. A really important and moving part of the response has been when Jewish people or like Jewish anti-Zionists mostly have come to me and said like, I relate so much to the novel. I'm so happy to see this part of worldview represented in a novel, especially in such difficult times. And it's prompted a lot of especially older Jewish folk to like tell me their stories of like Zionist indoctrination and breaking out of it. And that's exactly what I wanted to do. Jewish literature is almost entirely Zionist at this moment, and I really want to push against that and make narrative space for anti-Zionist and more diasporic viewpoints.
It's an interesting thing because you've been writing this book for many years. I know I've been editing it for several years, and it came out, I think, at the time that people needed that conversation, which is really crazy and bonkers. Yeah, I'm glad it did. Thanks, Aaron. Okay, so when we were finished the editing, we had long conversations about who we wanted to provide blurbs, like early reviews where we could put quotes on the cover. And we were like bantering with like the most famous people, truly. But if you could have like one famous person in the world read it, who would it be? And did I already try to get into contact with that person?
The person Jen's referring to is Seth Rogen.
I tried with Seth Rogen.
Jen went to high school with Seth.
I did not go to high school with Seth. I went to high school with people who are friends with Seth.
Same thing. But anyways, I thought Seth blurbing the book would be awesome. Like he's a Jewish stoner. He went to Jewish summer camp on the one on Gabriola Island, I'm pretty sure. Anyways, I thought that would be really great. But he was in Freaks and Geeks, which you mentioned today, but he wasn't available / didn't respond to us.
He just I don't even think he saw my message. I don't know. I tried.
So I mean, I'd still love for him to read it. I don't really care too much about famous people. It would be great if Trey, the Anastasio, the lead guitarist of Fish, read it.
Aaron loves Fish.
Ask me how many times I've seen them.
How many times have you seen them?
Like 83, I think.
How many hours is that? So much jamming.
Oh yeah. They just started their little fall tour last night.
That's a lifetime. 83 shows is a lifetime.
That is nothing in the Fish world. Like, don't even talk to me till you've cracked 3 digits. Yeah.
Wait, are they constantly touring?
They play like 30 to 45 shows a year right now.
Aren't they tired?
They'd never stop peaking. It's unbelievable. Steph and I are trying not to go to the States right now, so we didn't see any shows this summer. I'd love if maybe Sally Rooney read it. I love Sally Rooney. And I'm gonna twist the question a bit. I would absolutely love if in the very near future, in a free Palestine, if Palestinian people read the book.
That would be great. Yeah. That would be lovely. So there is a very rich sort of like history of Jewish literature, right? And this is my last question before we're going to ask for questions from the audience, so put on your thinking hats. Where would you like to see Jewish literature go in the future? Although I think you've already kind of answered that.
Thanks, Jen. I did kind of answer that. This is something I'm thinking about a lot right now. I'm actually writing sort of an essay / manifesto about exactly this.
Like an actual manifesto?
Well, yeah, it has a
Right.
manifesto aspect.
Yeah.
I'm quite forward in it. Yeah, I'm hoping that Jewish Currents will publish it. But yeah, as I said earlier, like Jewish literature, which has been around for thousands of years, literally, and I love it, and I want my work to be part of Jewish literature. Yeah. But it's been it's beholdenness to Zionism, not just the work itself, but the institutions, the awards, the people who read and write and discuss it, has been, not quite, but almost absolute. And, the time from moving beyond that has come and gone. But, I would love Jewish fiction in particular to really start taking a serious, hard look at how this happened to the Jewish people, right? At how this people that were like, more or less powerless, like they didn't have governmental power or military power, land power for thousands of years, and thrived and built unbelievable, beautiful, meaningful culture and society, how in the span of like 100 years basically turned into basically just took on the fascist project full bore. I think there's endless literary work to do there. And I truly believe that fiction can and does have an effect on the real world, and so that's the short answer. And I hope my work and like Burntshore can be a part of that trend.
I think so. The world is ready for it now, right? Yeah, the world is ready for Aaron Kreuter. Does anyone have any questions? Yes. That's a great question. The question's about hiring sensitivity readers for like cultural content when you, the author, are not of that particular community. Aaron? Or do you want me to start with that one?
I can talk about it. Yeah. I think authors can write about people that are different than them, but it's you have to do it just with anything in writing. You have to do it very carefully, and it has to do with intent. And in the end, you're just writing people. And one thing we didn't talk about is, from my point of view, I have major Anishinaabe characters, and before Nate read the book, I didn't go into Cindy's head. Like, we didn't have her like point of view. I just didn't really. I don't know why I didn't go into it, but I didn't. I maybe felt nervous about doing it. And the novel goes into lots of people's heads. And Nathan was like, he was like, you should really go into Cindy's head. We should see the world from her point of view. And that just, it's not that he gave me permission, but it opened up the avenue to do that. Where was I going with that? Yeah, I know, yeah. I do think, there's parts of other people's experiences that are not ours to tell, right? And like Jeff, the other Anishinaabe character, he basically says that when they're at a fire at an island and they're begging him to tell like an Anishinaabe ghost story, and he's like, those aren't for you. And so like, that was like, that's Jeff saying that, but also it's me, like, there's part of the Anishinaabe experience and story and narrative that's not me to tell. But that doesn't mean that I can't have real, vivid, important Anishinaabe characters in the novel.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I used to say this to my students when I was teaching, is that there's a way into a story for most people. Like, there's always a way into it. And you just have to figure out what your way is. But I would say, and I heard this from the very amazing and extraordinary J.L. Richardson, who's the executive director at the Fold Festival in Brampton, who's also the author of Gutter Child. I did a workshop with her, and she said, when you're considering writing people from a different community other than yours, the important thing is not like what to do or how to do it. The really important thing is to ask yourself why, and like what's what's your entry into that story? And I think that that guiding principle is really, really key, like sitting down and saying, why do I want to write it? What am I taking on that's not mine? Does it feel exploitative, or does it feel like a tribute? Like, there are ways of like doing it that are really sensitive and lovely. And sensitivity readers are really, really key. The novel that I just had come out, there's a portion of it, I have a character who's Filipino, and I had the Filipina Canadian author Precious De Leon, who lives in Calgary, do my sensitivity read for me. And not only did she, you know, correct me in mistakes I was making, she also had really great ideas for like character development, for the ways in which this particular character could be fuller. And I think that being really open to what a sensitivity reader has to tell you, like it could be, you're just looking like, did I get the names of this like holiday right, or the language right, but actually they're gonna have more things to say, more fulsome, and yeah, just being really open to that is really key. Yeah, great question. One of my favorite topics, yeah.
Thank you. Your book is set in 2013. What would Lake Burntshore 2025 be like?
Great question. What would Lake Burntshore 2025 be like? Haha.
Thanks for that question. When I finished the novel, I found myself not ready to leave the characters, but mostly the world. And I'm very close to finishing a cycle of short stories that take place in the Lake Burntshore world, not necessarily with the same characters, so some stories do have the same characters. And I did not think I was going to write about Ruby again. I sort of thought her time was done. But then, I don't know, maybe a half a year into the genocide, I realized that I was going to write a story from Ruby's perspective that starts on October 7th and goes for about 3.5 months and ends on January 25th, like the night before the ICJ was supposed to give their ruling on provisional measures against the Israeli genocide. And so this has turned out to be a beast of a story to write. But I really wanted to capture what those early months of the genocide were like from a Jewish anti-Zionist point of view. So camp sort of comes up here and there. Another story in the collection takes place the first major summer of COVID, so it's not 2025, but it's 2020, I guess. And a filmmaker basically rents the camp, because summer camps were closed that first summer of COVID, rents the camp, brings up a film crew, and they're basically locked in camp, and they're trying to make a movie, and things get pretty wacky when that happened. But other than that, answering what the camp looks like in 25, I think would be a bit spoily to the end of the novel. But what I will say is, as is happening at literally every Jewish organization or group or mahjong table or canasta table, as I hear a lot of from my mom, there's major tensions and debate and discussion and argument and hatred and disowningment and so forth and so on.
Where's the comedy?
There's always comedy.
Always comedy, yeah.
I mean, the one thing that like Jewish people and Chinese people share is mahjong, and there's always comedy.
Definitely.
Always comedy in the mahjong.
Which reminds me, Jen, we have to start working on our Jewish-Chinese mahjong play. Maybe it could be a play.
And like the main characters, like my mom and your mom?
That would be beyond a dream.
Oh my God, like Thelma and Louise, but mahjong and our moms? Okay. I saw another question, yes.
Just as an aside before I ask my question, I was the ski driver at Camp Rumba in Muskoka.
Were there soldiers as staff when you were there?
We had soldiers, they were called Shalim.
Yeah, that's what they're called. Shulchim, yeah, that's what they're called in the book. Yep. You can imagine what that does to a young, impressionable mind. Beloved. Mm-hmm. That happens in the novel, pretty much, yeah.
But my question is, have you, for people in Vancouver, the Jewish community in Toronto is so huge, have you tried at all to do any book readings in any more of the mainstream Jewish venues in Toronto?
That's an excellent question. I think try is a bit of a hard word, but I'm not welcome in those spaces, which I think is obviously it's disgusting. And it's going to become more and more of a problem. Like the Zionist mainstream cannot just continue literally ignoring the growing numbers of anti-Zionist Jews. Like it's going to seriously bite them in the ass. I joined this Jewish Authors Network in the States, and they and it was a big buy-in for the press. They're connected to like hundreds of community centers and all types of other places in the States, and they pitch our books, and then the community centers are able to bring us in. And so far, no one's been interested. Like, just the word anti-Zionism is like terrifying. And I think of Philip Roth, who's the iconic, great, if problematic, not Jewish novelist of the 20th century. In his early stories in the 50s, the rabbis in the Jewish community hated him. But on the other hand, they weren't afraid of having a dialogue. Like Roth actually went to a yeshiva university and sat on a panel with these rabbis who basically wanted to excommunicate him, and they debated the merits of the work. So there's something in the Jewish world right now that is literally beyond. It's not even conscious, the petrification of actually looking at what it means that a lot of our children and people of all ages are not beholden to Israel in the same way they once were. Saying oh, I don't talk to my daughter anymore. York University ruined her by making her hate Israel. Like, that excuse is not going to fly anymore. Not that it ever did, obviously. No. So yeah, thank you.
I do think there's it's a kind of a rite of passage if you're a political author for your community to hate you at some point.
I know, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Trust me, I know.
Bring it on, yeah.
Okay. I think we have time for one more question.
I feel the more hatred the book gets from Zionists, the better the book is doing, right?
You're going to be fine.
My dad and I joke with my dad that my dad's going to mail a copy to Jonathan Kay, who, yeah.
No, don't do it. I'll tell you about him later, but have a question.
I know about you and Jonathan Kay. Yeah.
We have beef. Yes, go ahead. Yes. No, that's fine.
That's okay. I haven't read the book yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. I heard you on CBC and had the meeting by my dad the book for his birthday a couple weeks ago, so maybe starting first and I'll get it after. But the first question is just, we've heard about IDF soldiers and the anti-Zionist diaspora youth. I just wondered if you explored all the interconnections, like many Jewish families are navigating challenges with family in Israel, and I'm sure lots of Jewish summer camp youth also have those kinds of connections and entanglements. So I'm just wondering about that more, sort of fluid space where the different groups meet. And then the second question was about the concept of camp. We were actually at a family wedding at a summer camp last weekend. Not sure it was.
Cute.
Yeah, it was in the U.S. I'm not sure if it was a Jewish camp, but judging by the graffiti names on the walls, it was and one of my Israeli cousins, who's quite far left himself, texted saying, how can Jews get together to celebrate a wedding at a place called camp? And his father is a Holocaust survivor, and so I had actually never thought of that before, and I've been pondering it. So, just any ruminations on that and what that figure of camp means in this particular.
For sure. Thanks. Those are both excellent questions. Yeah, the word camp is fascinating and multivalent. It's also in the word campus, right? We use the word all the time. Actually, Seema, Ruby's best friend, who's Palestinian, they exchange letters throughout the novel, and there's some drama there. But Seema basically mentions this in her first letter, that you go to a place called camp, where for me camps mean refugee camps where my cousins and uncles live, and then there's that other camp that we're both still living in the shadow of, right? So there, that's there for sure, right? Of course. In terms of the first question, which was you're asking particularly about Jewish North Americans who have Israeli families? That is in the novel somewhat. Itai speaks perfect English because he has his cousin in Vermont and he spends the summers there. It's definitely in there. I think I explored that a bit more in my previous novel, short story collection, Rubble Children. I'm actually more interested in that relationship in terms of Jewish North Americans who make Aliyah, who go and join the army. So there's I explore that in Rubble Children. Yeah, for sure. There's this when Steph, my partner, and I will be talking about someone's politics, and like the politics will end up being terribly Zionist, and she'll be like, "Well, he's an Israeli," and to me that doesn't excuse anyone. I mean, I'm a Canadian, and I hate Canada. Anyway, I do understand the immense weight of indoctrination and ideology and worldview. And it's like Itai says, like, if you don't serve in the army in Israel, you're like literally a pariah. So I understand the immense pressure, but there always has been a small, committed, true Israeli left. Like what most people call the Israeli left, they're just like against the occupation. They're not against like the apartheid in Israel proper. But there always has been a left, and there always will be. I would be thrilled if my novel was translated into Hebrew and read by Israelis. Funnily enough, Israeli literature is way, way more willing to critique the tenets of Zionism than American literature is, where it's basically verboten. So that's also interesting, of course. There's lots to say about this, of course. Yeah, thanks.
I think we've come to the end of our time here, but I wanted to thank all of you for coming and being with us today. I wanted to thank Upstart and Crow for selling books. Please buy a book if you haven't already. And I want
Even if you have.
Yeah, you can buy several. They make great birthday gifts. And I want to thank Jorge and everybody here at Vancouver Public Library for continuing to put on these events. I've hosted a lot here, and it's always a wonderful time. And especially want to thank Aaron Kreuter for being a Dreamboat author and one of my favorite people in the whole world. Yay.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.